Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today is the 28th of December, 2020. Alright, it's been a very interesting last 2 to 3 days. I think, a bit of a slow, news week over the last week since it's been Christmas. And I think the most interesting thing happening in the ecosystem right now is the price action, actually. I try not to talk about price too much on the refuels here. Like to focus on project updates, but there wasn't that much that came out over the weekend. So I'm going to focus a bit on, like the price and the general sentiment that I've seen on kind of Twitter and Reddit and just within the community lately. So I guess first things first, ETH is back up above $700. The last time it was at this price level was May of 2018. So quite a while ago now. Definitely not, May of 2018. Definitely not something that we've seen recently. That's more than 2.5 years ago now. Which is quite crazy, right? And that was during, I guess, like the bear market, when the price was coming down. If you think about when ETH was $700 during a bull market, it was end of 2017. So it really has been pretty much 3 years since we've seen this kind of price level here. So that's really awesome to see. And that only happened over the past couple days. Before that, for the last few days, we saw, Bitcoin going up a lot, right? And in turn, the ETH BTC ratio was going down a lot, as you can see here, right? We had this kind of what is this? The 13th of December, where Bitcoin started going really crazy, got to its all-time high and started really, really raging up. And that's when, ETH started to bleed against it. And, particularly this section here over the last couple of days is kind of when I saw a lot of people quote unquote capitulate, in that they kind of, lost a lot of hope. I saw a lot of sadness everywhere on Twitter and things like that. I saw a lot of people kind of seemingly giving up hope. They're like, why am I holding ETH if it's not performing against Bitcoin? This is crap. Like, ETH is so undervalued, all this stuff. And I was just sitting there and I'm like, I felt it too, right? But at the same time, I've played this game so many times. I've been in this position so many times over the years where this has happened. And every time the sentiment is that bad, it's literally a matter of hours before it reverses. So last night I was sitting at my computer. I looked at the price and I looked at the kind of ETH BTC ratio, and I was like, wow, this is pretty brutal right now. I can understand why people are feeling like this. And then I think it was maybe midnight my time or something like that. I noticed the prices started moving up. ETH started going up pretty quickly, and the ratio was recovering. And I was like, okay, this is new, right? This is something we haven't seen in the past couple days. And then this is what we saw right here. You can see on the chart here, right? ETH BTC just exploded up after bottoming out at around 0.22. It just exploded up so quickly and erased the last, few days worth of losses. And of course, ETH USD went up a lot too. So yeah, it just shows you how fast sentiment can change in this space. If you were on Twitter just yesterday, the sentiment was completely different. I was doing some shopping, and I was just scrolling through Twitter as I was waiting for something, and I just saw these memes being posted. I saw these people complaining. They're saying, jokes about if you say ETH is money, the ETH BTC ratio is going to keep falling, and all this sort of stuff. And it was really gloomy. I was talking to some friends, and they were quite gloomy about it. And I was just like, okay, and I kind of feel like this is the bottom, right? I feel like this is it. This is, people kind of lose all hope and they get to this position, and then they kind of and then the market just reverses, right? This is what markets do. They love to do this to people. I put a thread out about this that I'll go over in a sec, but basically, that was basically, I think it was 3 o'clock my time in the afternoon. So just a few hours later, it was, the price reversed, and then Twitter, the sentiment just reversed completely. And then today, it's been even, for me, I guess, it's been even even greater, right? People just, tweeting about ETH, saying ETH's going to the moon, it's going all-time high, all this sort of stuff. So it's just insane how fast the sentiment can change in this space. And I like to call it the sentiment pendulum. And I spoke about this a while ago in one of the Daily Gwei pieces I wrote, and I spoke about it again in today's Daily Gwei newsletter. So if you want to check that out, the link's in the description. But basically, it's this concept of this pendulum, right, that swings one way, and then it swings too far one way and has to come back. It always has to come back. That's what a pendulum is, right? It can't just stay one way. So what ended up happening was the pendulum kind of swung and then it stayed here. And here was basically the BTC ETH ratio, the ETH BTC ratio being like really bad, right? And the sentiment being really bad. And then, the next instant it swung back. And now this side is ETH BTC recovering and ETH USD going up to levels not seen, in over 2.5 years. So that's how fast sentiment can change. It's going to change again. It's going to keep changing. It's going to change every, it can change from every few days to every few months. It depends what time scale you look at. If you're looking at like the multi-year time scale, ETH BTC, for example, is still, very much down against, if I adjust the chart here, this is the monthly chart, very much down against Bitcoin, since 2017. You can see here, down there, and then a little bit up recovery during 2020, and then down again, and hopefully we keep recovering up. But if you watch these kind of trends, they can play out over days, weeks, months, years. And you kind of have to come to terms with that, not just in the markets, but like sentiment in general. Like, in 2018 and 2019, Ethereum, not just the price, but Ethereum itself was coming off of like the ICO mania, and it was, coming down off that. People were like, okay, what's Ethereum good for now? Crypto kitties clogged the network, ICOs are gone, who cares? And it was a pretty brutal bear market, not just for price, but for like, in terms of sentiment around Ethereum. Like, it was a very small niche community. We were building out all these things that we knew were going to be big, but we had to convince others of this. And I think the convincing happened in 2020 with the growth of DeFi especially. I don't think that it happened in 2018 and 2019 outside of the core Ethereum base. And now we have like people outside of Ethereum, new users piling in. We have not just DeFi, we have, DAOs heating up, crypto gaming heating up, bringing in new people, NFTs and art as well. Art especially is bringing in a lot of new people, I've noticed, crypto art. So we have this very vibrant ecosystem now where no one's really doubting Ethereum anymore. There are still people doubting ETH and, ETH's value kind of accrual as well. But the market will prove them wrong in time. I'm very confident of that. But yeah, so we've come a long way, and that's kind of like the multi-year kind of pendulum shift, going from, Ethereum is useless after 2017 to, wow, okay, Ethereum is settling more value than Bitcoin in 2020. So, as I said, there's different kind of time frames for different pendulum swings. But it will always swing back in my mind. Maybe a rare occasion it doesn't swing back for some particular kind of projects, right? Or some particular thing, and that just means the pendulum's broken. But very much like the Ethereum Bitcoin pendulum in terms of like, I guess the dichotomy between those two is very much intact. So yeah, and that's what you see play out in the charts. That's why I actually like looking at charts, right? Because you can actually view the sentiment of, the community and sentiment of people over vast time frames. If you look at the kind of monthly, I guess, ETH USD chart here, right? And we scroll out here, let's zoom in there. And, packed within these monthly candles is a range of human emotion, right? A range of sentiment. You have down here, right? This was after the DAO hack. So you can imagine during these months what the Ethereum community felt like. It's right here. This red is telling you exactly what the Ethereum community was feeling at that time. So despair, depression. Is Ethereum ever coming back? Is it a failed experiment? Blah, blah, blah. Right? And then 2017, you had this euphoria, right? You can see this playing out on the chart here. This is all green, going up so much. It went up from like, what, $10 or something to $1,400 in 2017, right? And then, of course, you see this here, right? You see downtrend in 2018, very, very brutal bear market where kind of, a lot of despair. Then 2019, we saw us tick up again. Bit of hope here, right? People felt a bit of hope that the bull market was back. And then bam, we just went down again, right? So lots of despair again into 2020. And, this was particularly bad 2019 because ETH basically started and finished at the same price of the year. I think it was $130 or something, $130 at the start of the year and end of the year, while Bitcoin actually posted I think a 100% gain or something like that. So that was a particularly bad year for Ethereum in terms of price and sentiment around that too. And then we've had 2020, where after this outlier here, which is basically the coronavirus-related dump, right, that affected all markets, outside of this outlier month, you see we go up, and the sentiment is just getting more and more crazy, right? We see June here, where basically DeFi summer launched, and you can see how much that propelled ETH, and the sentiment's going up. And now, obviously, we're painting another monthly green candle here. and the sentiment is as, as bullish as it's ever been. So that's why I like looking at these charts, these long-term charts, because even if you haven't been within the ecosystem at that time, you can kind of like, think about what happened during these periods of time and how people felt. So that's just something that I like to look at. But in general, I mean, I put out this thread yesterday. It was actually what was it, 7:40? So like 4 hours before the ratio reversed. So I thought that was quite funny. I didn't want to publicly call a bottom. I didn't want to say, hey guys, I think ETH BTC has bottomed, because if it didn't, I would have gotten dunked on forever. So I wanted to actually wait. But in saying that, I actually wanted to put out this thread because I was like, okay, I have to say something. Like I'm viewed as like a community leader within Ethereum. I'm always bullish on ETH. People are looking to me for kind of like guidance. They're DMing me. I need to say something. So that's why I put together this thread, which is basically talking about these kind of like sentiment. It's basically the sentiment pendulum and the market pendulum and how it can shift, right? And I mentioned here our markets are very cyclical. They can kind of like, screw with you, beat you until you capitulate, and then keep beating you, right? And your job as an investor is to figure out how many beatings you want to take, and for how long you want to take those beatings, and plan that out. And that's basically how much risk you want to take. So I think that is a good frame of mind. That's not an investment advice, but that's just how I think about things. And then basically down here, I just mentioned that I'm an ETH permabull and always will be. My thesis on it hasn't changed in 2 to 3 years. And Ethereum has had an amazing 2020 regardless of the ratio action. And on that note, Ethereum has had an incredible year, right? There's so much that's just happened within Ethereum. I'm going to go over all of that on a yearly recap video I'll be publishing soon, so keep an eye out for that. But in general, I think that in these kind of markets, it is very hard to have a long-term thesis on most things, because if you think about it, right, the only two networks that I consider to have any sort of future at this point in time are Bitcoin and Ethereum. Every other single network needs to prove itself, right, and prove that it can get to a scale that rivals or comes even anywhere close to Bitcoin and Ethereum before I'll consider it a success, or even start to consider it as a kind of success. So with that frame of mind, it's very hard to hold on to something that is advertised as something like an Ethereum killer for 2 to 3 years. Even the things that try to compete with Bitcoin, like Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin SV, go look at the ratio against BTC on that. They are dead, right? They may come back here and then during a quote-unquote alt season or a retail-driven mania, but in general, they are dead against these other projects. And that's simply because they don't have much usage. They don't have a huge community. They don't hold a candle to Bitcoin. It's the same with the Ethereum killers against Ethereum. So investing in this space is incredibly hard. DeFi projects especially, right? DeFi is so new that there's projects popping up all the time. You don't know which ones to pick. You don't know if you're going to pick the pets.com of DeFi or you're going to pick the Google of DeFi. You've got no idea at this stage. Even the projects that people are incredibly bullish on, like Aave, Synthetics, Wi-Fi, all these sorts of things, they are still not guaranteed winners. I mean, I personally think that Synthetics, Aave, and Wi-Fi are pretty great projects, right? I hold their tokens, but there's no guarantees, right? Another project will come along from a more experienced team, right? A team that's done this before with more capital. It's hard to compete with those, but this could happen. Or another traditional finance company could come in and just like somehow like make a better product than them, and maybe that gains more traction than the existing ones, and then the tokens you're holding bleed out against this new project. So it's incredibly hard, and this is why for me the only thing that I am comfortable holding long term is ETH. I'd be comfortable holding BTC as well. To be fair, I just don't hold any for various reasons. But BTC and ETH are the only things that I would feel comfortable holding for a long period of time, in terms of preserving my wealth through bull and bear markets, rather than trying to do speculative bets. And that's all it is, basically. So keeping that in mind, and keeping in mind that it's not investment advice, of course, it's just how I think about things. Keeping that in mind is a way to protect yourself from kind of getting wrecked, right? It can feel like a casino at times. There's a lot of different things that are going on. There's a lot of different voices that you're going to be reading every single day, right? If you visit Twitter and Reddit every single day, you're going to be reading basically everyone being like anguishing and bearish one day and everyone being super bullish the next day. And that's literally just like whipsawing because of the price. That's not how to do things in my eyes. That's not how to invest. That's not how to follow markets. Unless you're a day trader and you're trying to play that, that's fine. But in terms of like an investor, a fundamentals-based investor, that's not how you do it. You need to have a thesis and you need to stick to it. You cannot be flip-flopping between all these different things expecting them to pay off. I've seen people try to do this as investors, right? They have the investor mindset and they try to flip-flop every month or so with different investments. And it doesn't work, right? It just does not work. It's very hard to beat the market. As evidenced by just looking at the ratios of all these other things as compared to BTC and ETH, a lot of them find it really hard to long-term outperform these two. And that's just simply how it is in the traditional markets as well. A lot of people don't outperform the index, the S&P 500, for example. So yeah, I know I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent there. I've spent a lot of time talking about the price here, but I think that's been the biggest thing over the past couple of days. And just something that I really wanted to talk to you all about and to get you thinking about, because if you're going to survive this bull market and if you're going to try and not get caught up in the mania of things and try not to lose money, you need to keep these things in mind. I mean, I've been through, I think, I was around in 2013 during the Bitcoin run up then. I was around during 2017 during the ETH run up and Bitcoin as well, I guess. But I've gone through these bull and bear cycles. I know exactly kind of how they feel and how easy it is to lose money in them. In 2013, I mean, how old was I back then? It was 7 years ago. I was like 21 years old back then. I was young and naive. I was jumping in, or as the cool kids call it these days, aping in to all these random things, and I was getting dumped on basically. I was buying these random tokens, and people were pumping them up on Reddit. It wasn't much Twitter back then. Reddit, and on like media as well. I remember watching something about Quark Coin, and I fell for that and I bought into it. It pumped up a little bit, but of course I didn't sell, right? I was a complete noob. And then, it dumped and I was like, okay. So it was just like this whole thing. And, that experience taught me a lot, right? And it probably takes that for a lot of people, right? You have to experience it for yourself to learn from it. But that's just some words of wisdom, I guess, as we close out 2020. I hope that you've all had a great break up until this point. I know there's a few more days left of a lot of people's breaks. And I think that we're going to have a really great 2021 for not just the ETH price, but Ethereum in general as well. But on that note, one more thing I wanted to show you about the price. Jimmy Ragosa here has a GitHub section where he tracks like when people say Ethereum is dead. And he says that ETH price is now over every instance of when people called Ethereum dead, which is pretty funny. You can see the stars on the image here. So that I thought that was quite funny. I'll link this in the YouTube description. You can go check it out. It's basically a link to all the times an Ethereum hater called Ethereum dead. And it's basically, probably a who's who list of like Bitcoin maximalists and a few other people who don't really understand Ethereum and like to bash on it. But yeah, still pretty funny to see that. All right, some positive news out of Zapper. So Zapper was actually one of the biggest beneficiaries of DeFi summer, I think. And full disclosure here, I am an investor in Zapper, just so you keep that in mind while I'm talking about them. But basically, they reached $1 billion in transaction volume during, I guess it would be 2020 would be the majority of their growth year. Now, for those of you who don't know what Zapper is, it's basically a portfolio kind of, I guess you could call it like tracking tool where you can input your address and you can see your portfolio, you can see what DeFi farms you're in, you can see kind of like how much yield you've earned, all this sort of stuff. And on top of that, they also allow you to use these things called zaps, which is basically ways to get into different investments within DeFi or different opportunities within DeFi. So for example, if you want to add liquidity to Uniswap, you have to add 50% ETH or 50% other token and 50%, whatever other token you want to liquidity provide for. So you have to, if you bring 100% ETH, you need to go manually swap that for the token and then manually LP it. Whereas with Zapper, you can input what you want to do on the interface and it lets you zap in basically to this opportunity with one kind of transaction and one click for liquidity providing, for an example there. So that was really popular, especially during DeFi summer with all the new DeFi opportunities coming out. People just wanted a really easy one-click way to get into these opportunities. They didn't want to have to go through all these different things, all these different complicated things, and that's what Zapper offered. So Really great to see that not just, I guess, the DeFi protocols we think of, such as Aave and Synthetics, Compound, and all that, but, Zapper itself, in terms of like being an interface layer, has experienced such amazing growth in 2020. And I think they're going to have a really big 2021 as well, because we're going to get a ton of new people coming into the ecosystem, and they're going to need this stuff, right? They're going to need these tools. They don't want to go and use the complex stuff. They want a simple and easy to use interface to access all these opportunities. So really, really great to see that out of Zapper. All right, another thing everyone's been raging on about the past couple of days is Dark Forest. So for those of you who don't know, Dark Forest is a decentralized real-time strategy game built on Ethereum with zero-knowledge technology and running on, it's built on Ethereum, but it's also running on a layer 2 called XDAI chain. So the transactions are extremely cheap because of that. Sorry, XDAI is a side chain, not layer 2. I'm going to get in trouble for saying layer 2. But basically an Ethereum scaling technology. And this has been really great. So what you can do in this game, why they're in the news is because they released version 0.5 of their game. So they've released like previous versions and they reset it every time. But what you can do in the game is you can basically, build and collect planets. So you start off with one planet, and then you can go and like capture more planets, right? And the goal, I guess, is to become like the user with the most planets within their arsenal. And I've already seen, like, over the weekend, a lot of people must have spent a lot of time on it. There's people with like vast amounts of planets that have been able to capture, other people's planets and knock other people out of the game and things like that. And the universe is quite large, so that's really, really, really cool there. But yeah, the game itself is really great. I was playing around with it. It's really fun to play. There is a bit of a learning curve to it because of the fact that there's some new concepts and things like that you have to be aware of. It's not something that you need to be tech savvy for or anything, but it is, something that, you might need to kind of you might need to get the hang of. And on top of that, don't expect to win because the game is already, I think, dominated by a lot of bots. So, bots are obviously more efficient than humans. So what people are envisioning is that this game is going to turn into basically who can build the best bot, who can build the best bot player, who can amass an army using a bot. And it's going to be like, could it end up being AI versus AI, for example, instead of humans? So that's going to be really interesting to see play out. But still, humans can play, right? Humans can still have an edge. I mean, I don't know if you've seen any of the kind of like chess games, I guess, that people play against AIs. The people sometimes win, right? The AI isn't all knowing. It's not, it's not going to win every single game, and that might be what happens here in Dark Forest as well. So yeah, so to check this out, you have to have a key. I have, I think, 4 beta keys left. So if you really want to check this game out, DM me on Twitter or ping me on Discord in the Daily Gwei Discord channel, and I will send you a key. But yeah, first come, first serve, as I only have 4 left to give. All right, this just happened about half an hour ago before I started recording. So popular DeFi protocol Cover, which is an insurance protocol, ironically, they have been exploited. So the protocol itself has not been exploited. The token has. So there's still kind of information coming in about this. It's not 100% sure about what's happened. Maybe if I refresh this, Luciano would have updated this. No, he's just got a tweet here talking about not affecting the protocol. But basically, what people think this is that it's an infinite minting bug where people can mint an infinite amount of cover tokens and sell them into the market. Now, what this has done is it's caused the cover price to, when I last checked it, dump about 80% instantly because the person who used this exploit just dumped them on the open market, right? So this is a pretty bad exploit for the token holders. I don't know what the play is here. Like, do you panic dump because you think the project's dead, or do you think the project team's going to save the project and everything will be fine, and they'll roll it back or something, and everyone's tokens will be fine, and the price will eventually go back up? These situations are really, really shitty because of that. You just don't know what to do. I don't know what I would do in this situation, to be honest. Would I kind of like sell out and be like, okay, I've had enough of this, I'm just going to get out, or will I hold on and hope that the team kind of fixes this? I mean, I think the Cover Protocol team is pretty good. Every team, no matter how good they are, has bugs in their contracts. So it's just unfortunate that this happened. But yeah, I'm curious to see how they tackle this. And I think Degen Spartan actually had here If I refresh his page, maybe he's updated it. But basically, he had a look into it, and he said, as far as he knows, the hacker drained the affected balancer pool tokens of all their cover and then dumped all of it. If that's the case, then there should be no more sell pressure from the hacker. So in that case, it's probably not an infinite mint bug then, because if it had to come from somewhere, like the balancer pool tokens, then it wasn't obviously minted out of the supply. But as I said, I'm not sure. This is still evolving. I haven't seen the cover team address this yet. Maybe they're sleeping. That's always the case when these things happen, right? I think the hackers might actually time this. If they know what time zone the developers are in, you're better off doing it when they're kind of, asleep, right? And they can't react to this as fast. So maybe as devs, you shouldn't make known what time zone you're in, but at the same time, it's kind of hard because, you can just spot it by how active they are at what hours. Because obviously, if they're not very active for a few hours, they're sleeping. So yeah, that was an interesting observation as well. But yeah, I'll keep you guys updated. Maybe tomorrow's episode I'll have more information for all of you on Cover's hack. The Cover token exploit. I'm not going to call it a hack just yet, but the token exploit. But yeah, this story is definitely evolving, so I'll keep an eye on that for all of you. I guess that's everything I had to talk about today. Thank you for listening to me talk about the price, I guess, for most of the episode. I tried to make it relevant, I guess, to ETH investors in general and the sentiment in general. I think it's very important, even if you're kind of don't really care too much about the price or whatever, I think it's important just for sentiment in general and keeping that in mind that it does affect the overall sentiment of the ecosystem. Not long term, but at least short term is always something good, I guess, to keep in mind. So yeah, but yeah, that's it. Thank you for listening. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't yet. Be sure to hit the thumbs up on the video. Subscribe to the Daily Gwei newsletter. Join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.